I am Doris Wise Montrose, President of Children of Jewish Holocaust Survivors, and I thank you all for coming to learn about the Mandate for Palestine, the Jewish legal rights to the land of Israel from the Jordan River to the Mediterranean Sea. Over 4 years ago, on June 24, 2007, we had the privilege of hosting Eli Hertz for the first time in Los Angeles. The impetus to sponsor that seminar came from my own lack of knowledge on this subject, and I consider myself a fairly well-informed person, so I assumed I must not be alone. I remember that when I told people that I was putting on this seminar, I was asked if I was going to present the other side. Was I going to present a balanced view? My response is that for far too long there hasn't been a balanced view, and the imbalance has been to Israel's detriment. The prevailing notion that Israel is an occupier is still almost never countered by the truth of Israel's right to exist within internationally sanctioned borders. So again, this seminar is intended to present the other side, Israel's side, and the side of international law. When we learn how to counter the lies, or at the very least the misconceptions that are now masquerading as facts about the question of the legality of Israel's existence as a Jewish state without equivocating, those lies will fall apart. The facts of the Mandate for Palestine have been the best kept secret, and it is time to let that secret out. It is our obligation and our responsibility. So today we are here to present the facts, maybe even to offend people with the facts. Let us rewrite a historical phrase. If we repeat the truth often enough, it will drown out the lies. That's what Eli Hertz has been doing, and that's what we all have to do. Eli Hertz is the author and publisher of the book, This Land is My Land, which explains the Mandate for Palestine and the legal aspects of Jewish rights to the western side of Palestine, which is available now in English, Hebrew, and Italian. This book was published to counter the Arab Muslim propaganda accusing the Jews of Israel of occupying Arab land. The truth of the matter is that it is the Arabs that are occupying the Jewish homeland according to the Mandate for Palestine, a historical League of Nations document which became operational in 1923 and laid down the Jewish legal right to settle anywhere in Western Palestine. Prior to his arrival in the United States in 1974, Mr. Hertz served nearly 7 years in the Israeli Defense Forces as a paratrooper and was honorably discharged at the rank of captain. Mr. Hertz is active in organizations which support Israel and counter the anti-Israel propaganda. He joined CAMRA 15 years ago and is the immediate past chairman of the board of directors. He has been a member of AIPAC and has served on the Executive Council for 25 years, and he is the president of Myths and Facts Incorporated. Mr. Hertz is also the recipient of ZOA's Brandeis Award. We are very fortunate to have Eli Hertz speaking to us tonight. Let us give Mr. Hertz a warm welcome.
I hope that by the end of this evening, you will be better prepared to challenge Arab propaganda, and more specifically, Arab falsehood behind the words settlement and occupation. Q&A will follow the presentation, and we can start now. What we see here, obviously. Thank you. Okay, what we see here on the first third of the slide on the left side, you see the Jews being humiliated, Nazis in Spain, the Inquisition, the top is the Russian, and basically suffering and being humiliated over and over because they have no place to go. A little bit to the right, we have on top the question, why? Why hundreds of thousands of Jews came to Israel in the period between 1917 and 1948? Well, the reason is that they heard that the League of Nations is working on a plan where they will divide the Middle East to 5 entities. One of them, called Palestine, will be dedicated to the Jewish people. And when this rumor went across different places, Jews took whatever they could, some of them just a sack, nothing else, broken suitcases, and headed to Palestine. We have in the center a lady who belongs to those people who came to Israel. Can anyone recognize her? It's Golda Meir, the 4th Prime Minister of the State of Israel, immigrated in 1921 when she was 23 years old to Israel. She would be qualified to be called a settler. I want to go just over a few terminologies so it will be very clear down the road when we use them. My question is, what is Palestine? And you can define it by 2 words. Quiet. Okay, this is what it is. Palestine is a geographical area. It's not people, it's not countries, it's not a state. It is a piece of land called Palestine. The fact that the Arab want to adopt it as part of their living is completely false. What I found, and by the way, I purchased close to 21,000 pages from the British Archive to do that research. And most of the stuff that I talk about on the right bottom side, you're going to find the source. And most of them are from the British Archive. And so here is one report to the League of Nations by a commissioner from Palestine. And he describes what he believes are the border of Israel or Palestine. If you just follow the north, too tough to read it, but in any event, this text here, if you trace it, you will receive a map that is similar to the map of Israel today. What is the mandate? Any volunteers? We don't have volunteers. Here is a volunteer. Okay.
That was started by the British when they took over territory that they got from the Ottoman Empire after the First World War.
Almost.
No?
No, pretty good. Well, the word mandate in our case has 2 different meanings and should not be confused. One is a trust. It is a trust. A trust stays valid until all its conditions were met, which is not the case in Israel. The trust, if you read here, it's tough to read it. We'll go to the bottom here, and this is the trustee. The trustee, it's very easy to read. Great Britain was entrusted by the League of Nations with the responsibility to administer the area of Palestine in accordance with the provision of the Articles of the Mandate for Palestine. And so the British became the mentor and the administrator of the area of Palestine, and what their mission was is to bring the inhabitants, which are Jews, up to the level of independence where they can run their business and do not need help. A trust cannot be stolen, cannot be destroyed. It can only try to meet the condition so it performs what it needs to perform. On the other hand, a trustee can be a very temporary issue. When the British didn't like the fact that they are being shot at and they have problems with Jewish soldiers and with Arabs, they wanted out They were a trustee, but they didn't care. They just left the area. This does not cancel the trust who stays alive. Terminology. On this slide, we'll look at two parts. The top one reads, recognition to the historical connection of the Jewish people with Palestine. It's a unique statement because it doesn't happen in any other mandate with any other country. But it says that we have an historical connection to the land. No one else has it. Others got the territories like you are giving away lollipops. The second part shows you that at that time, people talking about the issues had no problem to recognize the Jews were there before and they are coming to reclaim their country. And so you're going to see the following text. Redemption of Palestine, reconstituting, recreation, rebuilding. All of it means we were there before. I divided the issue, I divided the issue to 4 pillars. One is the founding of modern Zionism by Hertz. The second is the Balfour Declaration. The third one is the San Remo Conference. And the fourth one is the Mandate for Palestine. We'll go and visit each. Benjamin Ze'ev Herzl, on the upper right, was born in 1860 and died in 1904. He lived just 44 years. And I consider him a visionary, a real prophet, that in the 1800s was able to say to the Jews, we were persecuted enough and we need a country on our own. At the age of 37, he was able to contact over 200 of the Jewish leadership in England, in the US, and in Europe, and brought them all together to Gaza. And this was the first Zionist gathering, talking and dealing with the homeless for the home of the Jewish people. He was such a visionary that when he felt that he is dying, asked to be buried in Eretz Israel. He called it Palestine. He was the push to the new Zionism idea. The second pillar is the Balfour Declaration. The Balfour Declaration is a statement of sympathy, has no value yet in law, but it's a sympathy to people for a home for themselves. The important part of here is that this, and I have no choice, I'll come closer. The statement here is coming from that letter, and it says, His Majesty's government view with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. What's important in that sub-quote is that future resolutions, future agreements, future letters, when they dealt with Palestine, they mentioned this piece. So we are in about 1916, 1917, and the war is going to subside. The Allies, 5 of them on the left side, are now facing, because they won the war. They won the war against the Ottoman and the German. What they found out, that they are now the owners of a huge tract of land. From Europe to the Middle East to the Far East. In this map, which was printed in 1914 when the war started, to the right here small, tiny country, a piece of land called Palestine. Now you figure out that the Ottoman was ruling for about 400 years. In 400 years, they had on the map a place called Palestine. And so they got together, the representative of the Allies got together at a place in San Remo, Italy, a place I visited about 22 months ago, when many people came from all over to enact the signing of the agreement. This is a villa, we stayed in this villa. And now, if you see on the left side, we have only 4 countries. We are missing the US. The US fought with the Allies, fought much better than all the others. But there was an issue. It has a relationship of a trust and an agreement. And President Wilson had to come in front of Congress and ask to get the vote to approve US joining the League of Nations. The Senate did not give him the vote. The Senate says we had enough of wars, we don't want anyone to tell us what to do, and didn't sign. And this is why the US did not belong to the League of Nations until a few years later. And I'll explain it. You can say, by the way, the modern state of Israel started here in San Remo. This is where they divided the Middle East to 5 parts: Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Jordan, and Palestine. And so the 5 allies put together the League of Nations, and you could join it by doing very little, because there was a lot of trust at that time. So if you want to join the League of Nations, what you have to do is not to go to war. And number 2, submit disputes to arbitration. The other thing that the people assumed or envisioned is the borders of the future Jewish land in Palestine. From 1920 to 1922, the British are working on a document to help to understand what is needed and what needs to be done in order to achieve a Jewish home in Palestine. 2 years of work and an approval of that work by 51 countries at that time. And let me just read it. 51 members countries, the entire League of Nations, unanimously declared, and this is the part, recognition has thereby been given to the historical connection of the Jewish people with Palestine and to the grounds for reconstituting their national home in that country. If you pay attention here, part of the Balfour Declaration text is embedded into here. The League of Nations would not publish and will not deal with anything if it's not unanimously approved. And what you see here, 51 countries signed for the mandate for Palestine, a legally binding document. By signing here, they accepted what the mandate for Palestine book is saying. Obviously, all of them are in violation, and today we don't have any of them taking this issue serious. That's the cover of the Mandate for Palestine document. We did some changes graphically, so just be clean and clear to read. And that's the cover. Just a second. Okay. As we look at the mandate for Palestine, we see one article, a tricky article, Article 25, which was inserted by Churchill for a reason. Article 25 gave an option to cut away the eastern part of Palestine and give it to the Arabs. Reading here, Great Britain exercised this option provided by Article 25, cutting away 77% of the land originally earmarked for the Jews and gave it to Jordan. This is just a better visual. Here in the white area is the area that was cut away from the original Palestine, from the original vision and promise of a Jewish home. And so we stand today with a small country, again similar to the size of Israel today. If you look and you can see, the Jewish part is about 23% of the total, and the Arabs have 97% of them. This is just visually I created so you will understand the magnitude of how Arabs has the chutzpah to say it's not fair. What is not fair? That you have here the 5 countries that make up the mandate. One is Jewish, Palestine, and the rest is Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and Jordan. Now let's read good. Palestine occupies 3% of this entire area. The 4 Arab countries have 97%. The British administration, as the mandate is going through, felt that the Jews are nervous. They don't know what's going on. Nothing is clear to them. No one communicates well with them. It was picked up by Churchill, who was in charge of the colonies, and he wrote a long letter about the relationship of the Jews to the land. I picked up only 4 lines, which are the summary of this letter, and is being quoted in many times. This is what it says. In order that this community, meaning Jewish community, should have the best prospect of free development and provide a full opportunity for the Jewish people to display its capacity, it is essential that it should know that it is in Palestine as of right. We didn't come to steal land. We by right own the land. And when a gentleman like this says it, there is weight. So we talk about Jewish life in the area called Palestine. We'll go over 4 examples. Before local Jews began calling themselves Israel in 1948, the term Palestine applied almost exclusively to the institution founded by Jews. The Jerusalem Post, founded in 1932, was actually the Palestine Post. Bank Leumi, that incorporated in 1902, was called Anglo-Palestine Company. The electrical company of Israel today was called the Palestine Electrical Company. And the last one in this example, today's Israel Philharmonic Orchestra, founded in 1936, was originally called the Palestine Symphony Orchestra. So do you see the magnitude of Jews working in Palestine, building huge institutions? You don't see anything like this on the Arab side at the same time. And now, the United States and the mandate for Palestine. What happens between them? I don't know if you see it on the left side, but 4 presidents of the United States of America supported a Jewish national home in Palestine. The 4 of them are Wilson, who actually started the League of Nations, Harding, Coolidge, and Hoover. And it's not enough that the president liked us. Here is a very interesting stuff, and I don't know how many people are aware of it. On June 30, 1922, a joint resolution of both houses of Congress of the United States unanimously resolved favoring the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people. Imagine it's a gathering of both Senate and Congress. And this is the resolution they come out with. Give me just a second. When I got the info, found out about these resolutions, I went to the archive, called the archive, the US archive, and requested a copy of the resolution. It took a long time to get it, but this is an authenticated piece from US archive that says this one line that is in quote, favoring the establishment of Palestine, of a national home for the Jewish people. And this is just one line in this resolution. Here is another agreement. They call it convention. We just went over it before. The US couldn't join, or didn't join, the League of Nations. But the Americans were pushing the British to give them rights in Palestine. They claimed they have people working there, they claimed they have commercial needs there, and so forth. The UK, after a short period of time, agreed and made an agreement with the US that give them the same rights of the countries of the League of Nations. But, and this is a very important but, when they signed this agreement, there were short 8 articles that specifically spoke about that issue. The real big item within this agreement was a full copy, word by word, of the mandate for Palestine that the US has to sign if it wanted to join the other countries who signed the same mandate. So you can say today, and it's a job for someone to take and try and do it, where is your obligation? You signed an agreement. The agreement says that you're going to take care of the Jews. What did you do? Probably nothing. And so I didn't believe them either. So I picked up and received this entire agreement. The president signed it. He actually can call it the law of the land. And this is the opening on the American side. For me, it was amazing to find it. This is from a text leading to the resolution 322. And I just want you to vision, when I read it, can this happen today? And this is what it says. Representative Walter Schindler from New York expresses his view upon the Arab question in Palestine. 1. That the Arabs shall be permitted to remain in Palestine under Jewish government and domination, and with their civil and religious rights guaranteed to them through the British mandate and under terms of the Balfour Declaration. 2. That if they will not consent to Jewish government and domination, they shall be required to sell their land at a just valuation and retire into the Arab territories which have been assigned to them by the League of Nations in the general reconstruction of the countries of the West. And number 3 is the best one. That if they will not consent to Jewish government and domination under condition of right and justice, or to sell their land at a just valuation and retire into their own country, they shall be driven from Palestine by force. So, figure out, this is an American congressman. You think there is an Israeli member of Knesset that has the guts to say it? Just a simple note, the League of Nations, which came upon the premise of keeping peace, felt that they didn't do a good job and disbanded themselves. So the League of Nations, on April 20, 1946, closed business. And what happened then is that all the assets, rights, and obligations were all transferred to the United Nations. And here is the United Nations on top, 1945, in San Francisco. Anyone knows what happened there? In 1945, the smart people wrote the United Nations Charter. They basically wrote the Bible of behavior on this earth. Below is the first assembly of the General Assembly of the United Nations, happened to be less than a mile from my home. The mandate for Palestine valid to this day. There were quite a few institutions and private people who were trying to put doubt into the validity of the mandate for Palestine. It's old, it doesn't fit the environment today. But here is the story. The first one, it says that Article 27 of the mandate for Palestine states that consent of the Council of the League of Nations is required for any modification of the terms of this mandate. No such consent was ever passed. No one came to the League of Nations asking for anything, that it's not fair, that it's a little bit, it's a little bit more. No one did it, and this went into effect. When the League of Nations finished its job, there was no one to go to ask to diminish the mandate for Palestine. The second one is very important. It's called Article 80. It's actually within the Charter, the UN Charter, a specific article, number 80. Article 80 of the UN Charter recognizes the continued validity of the rights granted to all states or people or already existing international instruments, including those adopted by the League of Nations. I'll show you in a second who pushed to get that language. That language is so smart. What it did basically to say is that any agreement that was executed by the League of Nations is valid and can pass through into the Charter. They didn't want to mention specific Jewish, but the language was led to what we mean, and today no one can change the United Nations Charter. The third one is the International Court of Justice. In a few instances where they had business to do with other mandates, and those other mandates say to them, listen, we are gone. The court says, and I'll read it, International Court of Justice, the ICJ, has consistently recognized the mandate survived the demise of the League of Nations. So you cannot take the mandate and do anything you want with it. And here, there is an explanation about Article 80, very important. The lobbyists, I call them the lobbyists, made Article 80 part of the UN Charter. Rabbi Stephen Weiss, and I didn't pick up to write it as the first one. This is what it is. Peter Bergelson, Eliyahu Eilat, Professor Ben-Zion Netanyahu, and A.S. Yehuda, and Harry Seldon were among the Jewish representatives that went to San Francisco. Their mission was to protect the Jewish right of settlement in Palestine under the mandate against erosion in a world of ambitious states. Article 80 was the result of their effort. These people were 30 years old, 25 years old, and decided to get together and were able to insert an article in the Bible and so the League of Nations is gone, the UN is up, and the US is looking to ways to get rid of the headache of the war between the Jews and the Arabs in Palestine. And so they decided partitioning the country would be the answer. Let's see. Number one, the UN resolution, number 181 is the number of the resolution, recommended to partition the remaining 23% of Jewish Palestine into a Jewish state and an Arab state. Note, it's not a Palestinian state. Jews accepted the recommendation, and the Palestinian Arabs and their Arabs brethren in neighboring countries rejected it, promising to defy its implementation by force. Resolution 181 lost its validity and relevance. When this was rejected by the Arabs, the War of Independence, Israel War of Independence, started on this day and took 18 months until it was stopped. Just for information, the area that is the white area is basically all desert. The Negev and other areas, completely desert. The fertile area, which is the black or dark, is the better part of the land that can be cultivated. But in any event, when one side said okay, and the other side did not come to the table, there is no agreement. This is one. Two, this was not an order, this was a recommendation. And you should be careful when you see how Arabs are treating the resolution, as if it's their resolution. And Jerusalem does not show up in the mandate for Palestine. Only the holy sites. Only the holy sites are mentioned. And the question, why isn't it mentioned, is simply logic. If this entire country includes cities like Haifa, Tel Aviv, Jerusalem, it was one of the cities under the mandate. So you didn't need any specific treatment. although the Arabs tried to, in the original 181 resolution, tried to say and to put a clause that will make Jerusalem an international entity. And so you can read it here. This is from the expert on Jerusalem, Professor Eli E explained Jerusalem is not mentioned in the mandate for Palestine, yet the holy places are. And this in itself is relevant, for it shows that in 1922, remember the mandate for Palestine, there was no interest or identify the question of the holy places with internalization of Jerusalem. Today, when someone wants to get a piece of Jerusalem, has no chance under legal terms to get anything. It's just a regular city, like any other city, plus has holy sites. And about the holy sites, yes, we can negotiate. Obviously, they are different faiths. But the city itself, it's a municipality, and has nothing to do with from here we'll go and observe three important articles from the mandate for Palestine. Article 2 says, the mandatory shall be responsible for placing the country under such political, administrative, and economic condition as will secure the establishment of a Jewish national home as laid down in the preamble in the development of self-governing institutions, and also for safeguarding the civil and religious rights of all the inhabitants of Palestine, irrespective of race and religion. Well, if you read it carefully, what it really says, the Jews have political rights in Palestine, and Arabs don't have political rights in Palestine. Here is how it's put. On the left side, the Jews. They receive religious rights, civil rights, and political rights. On the right side, the other inhabitants who receive only basic religious rights and civil rights. And then you're going to hear people from left to right, mainly from the left. It's not fair. That's not legal. Well, we added 4 lines to make it understood. And what it says is, political rights to self-determination as a polity for Arabs were guaranteed by the League of Nations in 4 other mandates. In Lebanon and Syria, the French mandate. In Iraq and later Transjordan, the British mandate. So every country got a piece to become a country. And in that piece they could have a government, they could give rights, they could do whatever they want. But they cannot accept all those lands and then say, but I want also a small piece from Palestine. That's not the deal. The deal is 5 entities, 1 is Jewish, and 4 are Arabs. And your self-determination, you do in your Arab countries. Not in Palestine. In Palestine, the Jews will do their self-determination. Article 5, fairly good one. The mandatory, which is the British, the mandatory shall be responsible for seeing that no Palestinian territory shall be ceded or leased to or in any way placed under the control of a government of any foreign power. This land was assigned to the Jewish people for their self-determination. And it's very clear, you cannot do with it anything but what then help the Jews getting it. And the third one, important one, let's read it slowly. The administration of Palestine shall, by the way, if you saw the previous one, the language is sharp. There is no two meanings to a word. When they use the word shall, they mean shall. They don't mean we'll try, maybe, we'll see, we'll do best effort. No, you do exactly what it means. And so, let's hear it here. The administration of Palestine shall encourage close settlement by Jews on the land, including state land and wasteland, not required for public purpose. What does it say here? It says here that settlements, not only that they are legal, that we expect the countries of the 51 to come and help it in growing the settlement. And so between this and occupation, there is no illegal settlement. It's clearly, it says the opposite. Encourage it to happen. And the conclusion is that legally there is no illegal settlement and there is no illegal occupation. To be close to conclusion, I found a document that encompasses all the rights the Jews have, leading to international rights also. Jewish rights to Palestine were internationally guaranteed. This is again from the archive, the commissioner in 1920, and he writes to the League of Nations. The Balfour Declaration was endorsed at the time by several of the Allied governments. Number one, was reaffirmed by the Conference of Principal Allied Power in San Remo in 1920. We saw it. It was subsequently endorsed by unanimous resolution of both houses of the Congress and the United States, and we saw it. It was embodied in the Mandate for Palestine, approved by the League of Nations in 1922, and we saw it also. It was declared in a formal statement of policy issued by the Colonial Secretary, Churchill, in the same year, not to be susceptible of change. The policy was fixed and internationally guaranteed. That's the language coming from the mandatory, whose job was to mentor and help administrate Palestine to the point that the Jews would be able to manage the country by itself. And so, after 80 years since Herzl to May 14, 1948, 80 years that led to that moment where the government, the provisional government of Israel, decided to call it actually through a declaration. 80 years. From that time to today, we have 63 and a half years. And we didn't sit and do nothing. We had a country, we had the freedom, we had the brain, and today, this country this land is our land. That's a collage of the capabilities of the country. And I'm done. Thank you very much.
You don't think the Arab, they have also some documentation about their rights?
I didn't ask them, but this working? Yeah, they might have, I don't know of them. And I'm sure that if they would have something that is factually worth anything, they would come out of it. They have no problem with forgeries. They do plenty of them, especially when they claim land in the West Bank, in Judea and Samaria. Many of them are coming with... So again, what I'm saying is, if they would have any papers, they actually use them. And there were quite a few cases that went to the Supreme Court in Israel, who gave pieces of land based on documentation to their owner, which was a Palestinian Arab. By the way, you know, there is no Palestinian. There is a Jewish Palestinian, and there is an Arab Palestinian. So be careful whenever you write something about Palestine. Try to remember to put those words, because they are very meaningful.
That's why you called me Palestinian the 1 hour.
You are a good Palestinian.
I would like to make
Was there any provision in the mandate for Israel to declare independence?
There wasn't, because he didn't see it yet like this. But what he did is the 28 articles that made up the mandate for Palestine is actually instruction how to put the whole thing together, that the end result would be a Jewish state. You couldn't be temporarily for life. There was a purpose to the mandate for Palestine document, 2 years in the writing.
Which provision provided for that?
Provided for what?
Which provision of the, which article in the mandate provided for Israel to declare independence?
It did not.
So wouldn't the argument from the Arabs be that we violated?
No, because you're not using the correct language. The mandate for Palestine assigned an area called Palestine for the Jewish people, period. And this is according to the mandate. This is why the mandate came to exist. So what you're using is a little bit further a terminology type. I don't say Israel for a long time, until toward the end, because it was usually a home of the Jewish people and so forth. Yeah.
You've made a very good case for Israel to have the legal right to all of the land west of the Jordan River. But in light of the Israeli government failure to assert the legal right, and also failure to deny that they're occupying Arab land, and also to agree to a Palestinian state, what difference does it make anymore?
That's a very good question. The problem is that we have no control on the government of Israel. And this is one of the shameful things. I visit Israel at least 4 times a year. I go to the Prime Minister's office, I go to the Foreign Minister's office. You know what they tell me? When we are talking, we say we have rights. I said, yes, you talk about rights, and the Arabs said they have rights too. But why don't you document the rights? If you would document the rights, the Arabs don't have an equivalent. And so, it's a mystery. You go and talk to them, and they nod their head, you're right, you're right, you're right. And so why don't you go? Like Arafat went in the last UN gathering, and lied. And everyone was clapping hands. And what happened if Netanyahu would be there and put that presentation? What would they say? But they don't do it. Yes?
The Arab Palestinians or Muslim Palestinians actually went to the UN, and why would they just go again and again and again until somebody will reverse the mandate? 90 years have passed and it's time to reverse it. I mean, it's the same legal body that has the right, much as they have the right to come up with a trust, back in 1920 to change the trust now?
You cannot change the trust. That's a problem. You can change the trust only if all its conditions are met. That's the purpose of a trust.
It's irrevocable, no one in the world, the UN or
No one. Figure out, and there is a principle in international law, actually it's the first principle of international law, that says agreement must be honored. Because if you don't have these few words, nothing else is worse. Wars, dispute, there is no order in the world. So the first item of the UN Charter basically says that agreements are so important to be followed. Without them, there is no order in the world. So you cannot come to an agreement now. And then because you have more power 5 years from now, says, you know what, let's change it. You have 120 some countries in the UN, all anti-Israelis. They qualify, they're over 2/3 of the members. If we accept what you say, they'll take over, kick the Jews to the water, and that's it. But they cannot change so easy. There is a way, but it's not being used because it can apply to many others.
If you set aside a mandate for just 1 minute, okay? Israel signed a treaty with the Palestinians in Oslo, which was probably the worst thing they ever did. But at the same time, we have to reverse that, wouldn't you think, in order for this to take effect and the mandate to still come back into effect.
If someone would have the guts, go on the podium in the UN and say, you know what, from now on, because I can't handle the Arabs who constantly run after us and shooting us and killing us, so I'm from this podium telling you, my guidance is the mandate for Palestine. You want anything, come and ask. We need to reverse the situation. We need them to come to ask from us, give me a small piece of land. It's not correct what's happening today. And they have the chutzpah to swap. And I don't understand the Israelis. How do you swap land that doesn't belong to you? Talk to politicians, Israelis. They have no answer. Half of them has no idea that there was a statement like this.
Eli, I don't understand what happened from 1922 for 20-something years that the state of Israel was not established.
Correct.
If the mandate is about saying this belongs to the Jews, why didn't it happen before then? Who were the Jews that were negotiating for us? I thought we were much smarter than that. And that it should take so long. And also, when they gave away 77% of the land, was there nobody that said a word? Were there no Jews, anybody that stood up and spoke up against it?
Many did, and if you're going to discuss this issue now, people will say the same. I see it differently. I see it as planned legally. When all the articles are there, there is also an Article 25, and it says what it says. And it says if you want to change anything, you go to the League of Nations and see if they'll approve. Churchill took Article 25 on September 16, 1922, came to the League of Nations and said, please exercise Article 25. And within hours, the League of Nations stamped, and that peace was lost. It's not fair, but it's what happened.
But where's the calculus in actually establishing the nation? Okay, I get it's legal, I get it's there.
Can I have a mic?
I get it, where's the calculus? I get it's there, I get it's legal, I get it's a global legal document. Why did nothing happen? Why was the state of Israel? Why were the Jews? Why didn't they actually take it and say, great, we love this,
You
we're
talk-
establishing our state here?
Talk to Doris, because sometimes her guests are from the Israeli government, and maybe you can get an answer to the issue.
This was before 48. This was from 1922. Why didn't
Correct.
it happen in 23? Why didn't it happen in 24? Why didn't it happen in 25? Why didn't it happen
Before the war.
in 26?
You have to understand that, number one, this area was just in war constantly. This is why, at the bottom line, it couldn't become a state. And the UN decided to partition it, which was a lousy decision. But they could not live in quiet. They had pogroms. They had the Hebron, the Gush Etzion places, slaughtered the Jews left and right, and started to reject Jewish immigration from Germany, who the British rejected. And so the Jews now are going after the British. And by the way, when you hear someone saying the British illegal, they were shooting, they were doing, there was a reason. They did not purposely touch a civilian. But their reason was openly, you are sending our brothers and sisters back to the ovens in Auschwitz. And we will try and prevent it, and this is why they fought the war. So in 1948, the League of Nations added enough. They said, we are attacked by Arabs, now we are attacked by Jews. We don't want to be anymore a mandatory. We are gone. And they left. So there wasn't a smooth period that nothing was done and everyone was sitting and drinking. They had to deal with realities. And the reality was a constant war, every day. Yes. Oh.
You've shown us in the mandate there was specific reference for non-Jews in Palestine, rights to be given to them, how to deal with them if they would not leave, how to deal with them, selling property, etc., etc. Were there such references for Jews in the other areas, since it was certainly well known that there were Jews in the Ottoman Empire?
But what's the question, actually?
In the mandate, you showed us a section having to do with Jews, non-Jews in
okay.
Palestine, and the rights and responsibilities, and also what to do if they wouldn't leave, if they didn't want to be part of the Palestinian.
This was a suggestion of the U.S. government, Congress.
Was there such a thing for those portions of the mandate having to do with the non-Jewish lands and non-Palestinian areas having to do with Jews? Because it was certainly well known during that time period that there were Jews living in sections of the Ottoman Empire which were part of the mandate geographical areas.
Number one, I want you to know, Arabs are not mentioned in the mandate for Palestine. Mandate for Palestine was for the Jews only. This might answer you part of the issue. There is no Arabs in the mandate for Palestine. And the rights that all inhabitants are getting, including the Jews, are civil and religious rights. It's only the Jews in Palestine were elevated to have political rights also.
I'm sorry, I must not be asking my question very well. If you would turn to the slide that you had that talked about what would happen if a person did not want to live under Jewish law who wasn't Jewish.
This is a statement by a congressman.
I understand.
So I have no...
Was there anything comparable to that having to do with those areas in the mandate that were not passed?
No, I don't know of any, and if there is anything, you'd probably see that there is no consideration like the Jews agreed to.
There was nothing to protect the Jews from the United States
No.
government, had nothing to say about.
I'll tell you what happened. In 1948, on the 15th, one day after the 14th, you open the New York Times And there is a list of all the Jews in the countries they came from, or the countries they were kicked out from. I didn't bring it, but I have the newspaper from that time. And Jews were kicked out from those places. There was no protection whatsoever. By the way, if I'm not mistaken, if you read one of the articles, talks about Jews in other countries that have rights, but didn't elaborate on it.
And the preamble of the mandate said that it recognized the historical connection of the Jewish people to Palestine.
Mm-hmm.
Why didn't you incorporate that into your lecture, or talk about that aspect? But before, why didn't you incorporate that, or talking about your lecture about the historical connection of the Jews to Palestine? I'm sure you have a reason.
I did mention it.
Pardon?
I did mention it. This was the first line in the terminology page that was a little bit different than the terminologies, but it says that there is a historical connection between the Jews and the land.
No, I mean, why didn't you discuss the spend about 15 minutes on the historical connection between Israel and between Palestine and the Jews?
Well, no, because I could incorporate many, many things. Give you an idea, for example, archaeology. You can talk about archaeology. You see the land of Israel on every place in the West Bank. There is evidence every 10 foot of Jewish life. Look what happens in the antiquity. Every day they discover things of the past that belong to Jews. Do you know that most of the Arab names in Judea and Samaria have nothing to do with Arabic? Half of them are copied from Hebrew names and changed a little bit, but they don't have their own language. They don't have.
My thought was those would be stronger arguments, possibly, than these. And I thought that would be, I was looking forward to something like that.
I didn't do it on purpose, you know? Yes?
Prior to the turn of the previous century, weren't the Jews offered land in Africa, like say Uganda or another country?
There was, among the ideas that they tried to entertain, people spoke about different places as possible place for the home of a Jewish people. One of them that was mentioned was Uganda, I think. But this just fell apart because people wanted to go to the specific land. Jews walked from wherever it is to Palestine. You know for what purpose? To die and be buried in the land of Israel.
And one more fact that I want to ask about. See, I thought the name Palestine was invented by the Romans.
Correct.
From the word Philistine. And after the Jews were kicked out in 70 AD, the Romans declared it Palestine.
Okay. I didn't want to treat it as a historian because it's not relevant. The word now used is Palestine. It is used in documents and resolution, and I don't need to steer new stuff. We are, I think, with the mandate for Palestine on a very, very strong foot. Justice is on our side in this case, and we don't need to bring to the arguments many, many right things, but they don't help us in their argument.
Since Israel has gained effective control of the territory west of the Jordan River since 1967, as has been projected by the mandate, why hasn't the Israeli government declared that as its lawful right under international international law, the whole territory.
Well, the only thing they can do overall is annex the areas. And annexation can be done at any time. And you need a good reason to do it, and try to get sympathy from some other countries to that action. That's basically, I don't see any other way.
Well, the United States, you stated back in the 1920s, recognized it already.
Correct. And I tell you that most of the members of Knesset don't know about it.
What's the matter with that?
It's very, very sad, although I'm smiling, but it is serious, very serious and very sad. Your representatives don't know the history, don't want to stand behind people who bring the issue. They come here to visit, by the way. They come here to collect money. So think about those questions, and when they come in, ask them. Yes.
Thank you for that excellent informative presentation. Can you please clarify how the status of the mandate and how it wasn't affected by the partition and the War of Independence? And it would seem to be that, with the Oslo Accord, that it would actually invalidate the mandate, because if the UN had permission to, that the League of Nations resolutions were transferred to the United Nations, and the UN was overseeing the Oslo Accords and all the ceding of the land that Israel was doing, that would invalidate the mandate.
Well, here I'll give you an example. The mandate for Palestine found its place in two places. One is the peace treaty with Egypt, and one, the peace treaty with Jordan. This took away those two areas from the responsibility of the mandate for Palestine. If we could get the Arab Palestinians who sit in the West Bank, Judea and Samaria, out, it would be a different story.
Okay.
Do you have another part? You have part to the question?
Yeah. Like if certain ceding of land...
Okay. You spoke about the partition. The partition plan, if it would have been executed, would be an illegal step. Because the General Assembly, under the rules of the United Nations, does not support it. It could only be supported by the UN Security Council, because those are the rules. I don't know why the Americans were rushing, the British was rushing, and did this recommended partition that is actually meaningless in terms of international law.
I would like to make a few observations. One, the 77% that was given to
Jordan.
King was given, it was actually to Saudi, and the kings from the House of Saudi, and I think you're right. So gave it to Jordan, but Transjordan, but the king of Abdullah was from the House of Saudi, because it's a part of Saudi. And since then, in the middle 30s, when the English put out a white paper, they purposely switched from helping the Jews to make a country, they helped the Arabs to... This
was the Peel Commission.
Yeah.
The Peel Commission recommended to shut off the ports. No Jews.
No Jews. And that was
and people loved it. But when it came to London, and the lawyers looked at it and said, you know what, we're going to be in violation of the mandate for Palestine if we are accepting to stop immigration, because one of the articles of the mandate talks about increasing the immigration.
But it didn't help. They still stopped the immigration. Number two, which sometimes I don't understand why the Israeli government doesn't do it. There was not one piece of land that was taken from Arabs, Palestinians. Every piece of land was bought. Until today, there's in Israel, the land that the Arabs...
I have a list from the archive out of 21 books that they published.
Yes.
That you see every opportunity they bought the land. And you see here, Rothschild.
No, I'm talking about the land after 48. That they ran away from Yafo. The land is, they have it, they still pay rent. The people that took the houses or went to Yafo and other places, they pay the rent to the government of Israel. And Israel has a whole...
I'm not aware of the procedure. There is what's called in Hebrew rechush natush.
And that's why in every land that they bought, even from 48 onwards, they paid money. Mm-hmm. They never took land, because the land it belongs to Israel, it belongs to the Jews. Why it's not publicized? Fact is not publicized.
I don't know.
First, I really want to appreciate Eli and Children of the Holocaust for bringing such wonderful speakers to us. And I know it's a thrill for me to have read some of your readings, to see your face, and I salute you because I have no patience for the work that you do, which is arduous and tedious. And so I appreciate your temperament. I don't have that temperament. I have two questions. The first question is that before there was England or before there was America, and eons before that, there was the Old Testament, which said that the land belonged to us all the way to the Tigris and Euphrates in Genesis, and why does that not have any legal status? And my second question is, we also read people like yourself or Carolyn Glick out here in the diaspora, and we wonder what is the feeling of the people of Israel. Are they more inclined to have the views of you or Ms. Glick, or are they more inclined to be weary and give up and give land up to the last falafel stand in Tel Aviv?
Well, they do very little. The government of Israel does almost nothing. To promote, we do it from our own money, from our own earning, from our own pocket. My kid says to me, I cannot get money for school, because you give it to AIPAC. Well, it is, as I said, it's very, very sad. And I go in, I'm flying to Israel on Monday. My regular week, we'll meet here and we'll meet there, and I'm trying to get something, and it's very difficult. There's one guy, Danny Danon, who is a young, ambitious guy, and I speak to him, but it's not a priority for them. For them, they need to learn it. And I said to them, if you would learn this subject in a traditional way, you would have to bring about 20,000 pages that describe everything that happened in this period. And no one has a patience to deal with it. I took and reduced this 20-some thousand into a booklet of 52, and even this one they don't read completely.
Thank you very much. If you want to buy that reduced book, it's back there, $5 in English and Hebrew. Thank you very much. Thank you, Eli.